All right, after the U.S. Supreme Court decision on Friday that ruled against the president's emergency powers to impose sweeping reciprocal tariffs, President Trump has signed a proclamation imposing a temporary 10% global tariff on nearly all U.S. imports, and then later raised it to 15%. And earlier today, in a social media post, the president warned other countries not to play games following the court decision. He went on to say that if any countries do so, they'll be met with much higher tariffs. So how might all this continue to unfold? Well, join me now to discuss this is David Bahnsen. He's founding and managing partner and chief investment officer of the Bahnsen Group, which is one of the top financial advisors in the country. David, welcome back to Washington Watch. It's always great to have you.
Always a pleasure to be with you.
All right, so a lot going on here. What does Friday's Supreme Court decision ruling mean for especially those countries that had already negotiated with the Trump administration on sweeping tariffs that he imposed last year? What does all that, the ruling, mean for them now?
I suspect that most of those deals that were negotiated are going to stick as they were. There are big beneficiaries in this ruling. Mexico and Canada were not part of deals that had been done. And because of the USMCA, which was a Trump administration deal done in his first term, they're not even subject to the 10% tariffs that he's trying, or now 15% he's trying to implement under this Section 122 deal that he announced over the weekend. Our estimates are that the total cost of tariffs to the American importers are going to go down now by about $70 billion. Now, it had been about $120 billion, close to $130 billion, that the IEEPA tariffs that the Supreme Court just ruled unconstitutional, that they had cost in terms of American import tariff or taxation. So all that to say, 70 billion instead of 130, it's about half. About half of them are going to stick with a different tariff implementation, and about half are going to go away. And then, as the news has been reporting, there's a lot up in the air about refunds of these tariffs that have been collected already.
Yeah, there is a lot in the air on that. What are you hearing, or what is your impression on that? What with the tariffs that have already been collected? Are they in jeopardy now? Are they going to have to be paid back? What happens with that?
Well, certainly they ought to be paid back if they've been ruled unconstitutional, which they are. The problem is that what the process is going to be, the paperwork, the appeals, the litigation. My fear is that really small businesses without the resources to go fight are probably not going to be able to collect. But we already know that a lot of other companies have been positioned already. My own view is that they can actually do it electronically, very simple. Through customs, they have now electronic infrastructure. How they received monies could be sent back quite easily. But I don't think the administration is going to make it easy. My economic perspective here is that it would be a gift to the administration for $120 billion to go back to these American company taxpayers that have paid it. It would really be a boon to capital spending, capital expenditures, capital investment, hiring, wage growth. It would be very strong for the economy to get that $120 billion back in the hands of the private sector. But I suspect it's going to be, again, about half of it that does get refunded, and even that won't come easy.
Interesting. So what about, you mentioned it, I referred to it, you mentioned it as well, the president's latest move to impose a temporary 15% global tariff. How is he doing this, and is this something also that we might see challenged in the courts?
I certainly hope we will see it challenged in the court, because there's no real sense in which anyone can believe it's legitimate. It's from the 1974 Balance of Payments Trade Act the Nixon administration used, and the language very specifically says to protect the currency if there is a balance of payments emergency, short term, it can only last 150 days. well, no one can say that there's a balance of payments issue. Some people might think there's a balance of trade issue. Even that I would vehemently disagree with. But it's quite a stretch to use this too. But the president has discretion to go do it. The problem is, even at 15%, that's lower than a lot of the rates that had been charged. So from his vantage point, he's still taking a pretty big reduction. As I said earlier, about 70 billion will now be collected versus 120 or 130 billion with IEPA. But I think there's going to be court battles on this too, Jody. So I think that there's a lot of complexity along the way. And then here's the problem economically. It just exacerbates uncertainty. Businesses can't necessarily make hiring decisions or capital expenditure decisions because this uncertainty continues.
Well, there certainly has been a lot of confusion and, I guess, economic chaos, if we can put it that way. But if the president succeeds in all of this in the end, what would the impact be?
Well, what do you mean by succeed? As far as getting these 122 tariffs through, or what?
Right. If he gets the if he gets these tariffs through that he wants to, that the court just said you can't do, and then he does it again through a different law, by doing all this, what would the impact be, not only here in America but around the world? And sorry, we've only got about a minute left, but I'm just curious, what would that do?
Well, all of it is draining on the economy to some degree. You know, you had 0% goods inflation in President Trump's first term. It was 0% goods inflation by the time the Biden administration ended. It's now up to 1.7%. So you see goods prices going higher. But again, I don't really know how to answer, because the president himself has repealed the tariffs on coffee, bananas, sugar, household products. He's delayed it on pharmaceuticals. So what the end game here is very tough to say. It's creating a lot of economic uncertainty. And I think that getting better deals with countries is a good thing. Having small businesses that don't know what they can afford to do is not a good thing.
Financial advisor David Bahnsen, thank you so much. Always fascinating discussions with you. Thank you for joining us today on Washington Watch.